Oh, this is so fun. Hey, welcome, everyone, here and online to Green Apple Books on the Park. I'm Brendan, and I'm a bookseller here. And I'm excited to welcome Amber Flame tonight, reading from her new poetry collection, Apocrifa, joined by Miah Jeffra. Yeah, so thank you for joining us in person online. We are broadcasting from San Francisco. We are on unceded Ramaytush Ohlone land, and we hope you join us in our pledge to turn land acknowledgement into action and donate either your time or monetary means to an Indigenous organization every time you hear a land acknowledgement. Brief business, I don't think this is going to be too fast or long, but silence your phones if you haven't already. Check out our event calendar website. We have a lot of great stuff coming up. The restroom is behind us, but I'm about to pull down a banner so that no one can, there you go, go back there until after the reading to use it, and it'll be available to all 5 of us here. And let's see what else. We have copies of Amber's book up front at the cashiers, so afterwards, please buy a copy and come back and Amber will sign it. And when you're supporting us, you're not just supporting independent bookstores, you're also supporting authors like these two who I'm going to introduce, and you get a book. So, all right, about Miah. Miah Jeffra is the author of 4 books, including The Violence Almanac, which is a finalist for several awards, including the Grace Paley and St. Lawrence Book Prizes, the novel American Gospel, winner of the Clark Gross Award, and co-editor of the anthology Home is Where You Queer Your Heart. The work can be seen in Story Quarterly, Prairie Schooner, The North American Review, Barrow House, and many, many others. Miah is co-founder of the Whiting Award-winning queer and trans literary collaborative Foglifter Press, and teaches writing and decolonial studies at Sonoma State University. And the main event tonight, Amber Flame.
It's not our hearts and hoops.
Wonderfully color-coordinated conversation partners. Is an interdisciplinary artist, writer, activist, and educator whose work has garnered residencies with Hedgebrook, Vermont Studio Center, and more. As a singer-songwriter in front of her jazz-inspired country sauce blues band, Last of the Red Hot Mamas, Flame sings about Black queer life. A former church kid from the Southwest, Flame's poetry and essays have been published in many arenas anthologies, including Wanting, Women Writing About Desire, Alone Together, Nailed Magazine, Winter Tangerine, and Split This Rock. Her first full-length poetry collection is Ordinary Cruelty. Apocrifa, for tonight, is her second book. She's a queer Black dandy mama who falls hard for a jumpsuit and some fresh kicks. And so for that, let's give a big hand to these two. Thanks.
We've got our wine.
I know.
Everything will be all right.
I wish it was in a Dixie cup, though.
Listen, a solo cup or Dixie cup, come on now. Hi. Thank you for being here. It's Friday the 13th. We're going to get a little magical and manifesty on you. So I would love for you to consider what it means to be a lover and what it means to be a beloved, because that's what my book is primarily about. And I actually love to start these things with a conversation, because then you know a little something about me and why I wrote the book, something about the author that I asked to join me and why they wrote the book, why we write the books that you all hopefully like to buy. And because it's such powerful, like, if you're into that woo-woo stuff, it's such powerful energy today, I was really hoping that we could get into this weird symbiosis, what do we call it, that you and I keep finding points of connection, because we met in March. Officially. Yeah. Yes. So we met through another collaborator to celebrate American Gospel coming out at AWP, which is a big conference it was held in Seattle, which is the reason I went, because I lived there or nearby. Otherwise, I'm not going to Kansas City. I'm just saying, I'm not going.
But there's good blues in Kansas City.
There is great blues in Kansas. I will be in Senegal, actually, on retreat. So that's why I'll be missing it. But also, Kansas City is still kind of a hard sell, y'all. It's a hard sell. For a conference with thousands of people, not my jam. But at this event, it was this funky little museum in Seattle. And you had no idea what was coming from the other readers, right?
Nope.
And I remember, because what I walked away from after meeting you and performing in front of you, when I stepped off the stage, I think you said, "Holy shit." I need to know you. And we just like, from that moment forward, like I've stalked you a little bit online. I've followed you on things. And then I'm watching this thing and I'm like, oh my God, that's just like me. Oh my gosh, we have that connection too. So church kids, Southern, not church kid anymore, not church adult, queer, non-gender, non-binary.
Just playing in that.
I'm just being Amber Crane.
Space.
You're just being Miah, right? Like that's where you're at. We teach, we write all kinds of things, but this is what we just learned today, y'all. We both do visual art and we both danced once upon a time. And we both did music.
Started music, yeah.
Gospel,
of course, you're still
going.
going. You're still going.
I'm going again. I'm refining it again because I was not writing poetry, so I started writing blues songs. Blues songs are easy. There's a call and response. You get your theme and you just run with it. Ask a couple questions and present a couple answers, whether you know them or not.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
What are your songs about? I know what your poems are about. Oh my gosh. I want to know what your songs are about.
Thank you for asking. Oh my gosh. Let me tell you. Actually, it's really funny. It's very word nerdy. Angela Y. Davis has a book called Blues Legacies in Black Feminism. And so when Ma Rainey's Black Bottom came out with Viola Davis, there was a resurgence of interest in the blues. And I have had that book on my shelf for at least 20 years. I borrowed it from a friend during college and started to read it and kept putting it down because it's nonfiction, it's very academic, it's a little dry. But every time I read the prologue, I'm like, oh my gosh, what she's saying here, which is that Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith, and Billie Holiday were not feminists by any means. They were actually really horrible to women, but they were the precursors to Black feminism because they were writing about the oral history of working class Black queer lives at the time, and nobody else was documenting that in any way. So it started as a project to maybe do covers of their songs. And then I was like, people aren't writing about Black queer, they're not writing about my life right now. And so I wrote a suite of songs that are about apocalypse, about depression, about new spirituality, about parenting, about working, the things that affect us today. It's called Magic Black Woman. And it's about to come out. It's about to launch. Last of the Red Hot Mamas. That's my band. You can find us on Spotify or wherever you stream music. So yeah, it's funny because I was like, how do I speak to this world right now? How do we survive? And I think that's part of why I wanted to talk to you about magic and manifestation tonight, is because there's a quote from there's joy in the morning, right? In the Bible, there's that line, there's joy in the morning. And I've added a U to morning. So there's joy in the morning, right? And how you mourn, how you grieve, how you encounter and face loss. And I've been clinging to that there's joy. There's joy. There's going to be joy. And so much of what I'm trying to manifest, so much of this book tour for this book, which is a love story, fictional love story, not my love story we can all hopefully believe in. There's so much of trying to reclaim that for myself because the world's a trash fire. And every time I look around, I go, oh my God, what do I say? What do I do? What can I do? What can one person do? And it gets so depressing. And so I have committed to speaking into a canon of a future that I want to live in, that I want to stay alive for and work towards.
Do you feel like your poetry and your music both do that?
I think everything I create does.
Yeah?
Everything I create at this point is to stay alive. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To stay alive in the way that you want to be alive.
Joyously. Right. Because there's no point in staying alive just to suffer through it. Right. I'm not here for that.
Not just to sustain.
Right, exactly. Not to just survive, but to thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you? I know, flip it quick.
Yeah, damn. I was in interview mode, Yeah, I mean, I think the music I used to write was always to giggle. It's always humorous.
Okay.
It's funny that way. Yeah. I have a selection of ukulele songs that are in blues They're,
so funny, I have
they're
a ukulele
blues
in my
chord.
band for many of the songs.
Oh, you just
My friend plays ukulele.
Where is it? Where is it? Emma? Where is it?
I don't play it in that one. I play the guitar.
But it's a whole series of songs that are advice to straight guys on sexuality. The gay man giving them advice on sexuality.
So it's like queer ukulele for the straight guy?
Yeah, kind of, right. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it just started when I was giving this advice to all of my straight friends about the ladies that they were engaged in tete-a-tetes with, and I just started delivering this advice, and it started coming in kind of rhythm, and they're all blues songs to the ukulele.
Of course.
So it's funny, but there's kind of joy. The music is joy. The writing is a lot of forgiveness.
Ooh.
I think if I was gonna forgiveness to myself, or forgiveness to others, forgiveness to society. So maybe I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah, probably.
Not just sustaining, but
because what happens when you forgive? What does that allow you?
Oh, it releases, right?
Right.
The forgiveness is for the person who's forgiving, not so much for the one who's being
otherwise you ain't gonna get shit from it. If you're waiting for them, it's not gonna happen.
And we kind of know that because the blues is all about that. Actually, there's a lot of relationship in that. That's interesting. Blues and gospel. All right.
Yeah. I love that you're doing whimsical ukulele though. Like I think that it's so funny to create for your joy and to have I feel like that's how projects birth for me at this point. Like I'm not like, okay, I'm going to write a project and it's going to be about this. I didn't set out to write a canon of these blues songs, but instead I was like, what do I want to speak on right now? Like, what am I trying to say? And it was like, how can I love blues because you can be super raunchy, but subtly. So you sing these lines, and I have a kid in front of my kid, and my kid is like, it's not like when my kid's singing Darling Nikki by Prince, right? Like when he's singing Darling Nikki by Prince, I'm like, oh, I played that album a little too much because I don't think you're clocking what you're actually saying right now. But when it's like, if you want the fire, baby, I got the flame. We light it up. You'll never be the same. I keep it hot. It's just it's got all the innuendo and none of the actual, right? It has all the hints and the teasing, and that's what music is. Is a chance to not have to say it all, but to get that little wink and nod.
Yeah,
right?
Especially in blues because there's so many dips. Right?
You can write it. Yeah.
So I have a question for you then.
Lay it.
Poetry, music. Poetry, music. How do you choose in manifestation? You have ideas that are coming. How do you know which one you're going to use? What medium? Because you also play with visual and dance. So how are you making that choice?
I don't. This is the other reason I'm here. I think I'm a conduit, a vessel, and I feel very lucky when I'm chosen by the muse. It's not my muse. It's not me. It's sort of I get this idea and I can take action on it or I cannot. And if I don't, I'm sure that if it's a good idea, it's going. Somebody's gonna catch it and ride that wave. And I've watched it happen where I'm like, I had that idea 10 years ago and I didn't do anything with it, right? You have those moments of inspiration. And so there's times where I just can't. I just can't write poems right now. Right now I'm reading poems that I've already written and I put so much effort and work into. And so my brain, that part of my brain is not clicking, generating things. It's been a long time since I've written a poem, but I'm writing prose, right? I'll write an essay instead. And that's been really rewarding. The music, I don't write the song. Okay, so with poetry, I write poems often to manifest something. And we'll talk about that with Apocrifa. But with songs, it's I write the song because it comes to me. And it's there, and it's a little in my head, and I got to get it out. And when I get it out, it's so satisfying. That's just for me. It's when I perform. That's when I start going, what do I want them to walk away with? What do I want the audience? How many times do I want to do this song? This last summer, I was I want a gig every month for the band. I want to perform once a month at least, every month through the summer, from May to September. That's what I want to manifest in the world. I want to have the opportunity to get out there all through the summer. And it happened. And it was just sort of like, oh, do you want to perform? Like, some happened a week before. Like, do you want to get on the stage? And I was like, oh, there's June. It happened a week before. And then, somebody booked this for September and May. And so it's like, okay, May and September we're taken care of. How are we going to fill these other months? And they just kind of clicked into place. Mm-hmm. And that's when I knew that, like, every time I speak, say it with intention and clarity, because I could very well be like calling that energy in. And so I have to be like, do I want to be performing every day? Is that really what I want to perform more? That's not very specific of a prayer. You gotta be careful with that one. Because then you're like saying yes to all these things and going, wait, that's not what I meant. What I meant was I want to have this feeling when I perform. And getting more clear about that. Mm-hmm. With music, it's always after the creation. Because that's like, I feel like songs, like I can hum songs all day at my home without it being me making music. But when I'm making music, it's for you all. It's for the world. Poems, I don't know if they're for the world until I've finished.
That's really interesting to think about as a process. Yeah. I kind of agree with it.
Yeah, because you switch mediums, as we've discussed.
Right,
so.
But I think you're right. I feel like when I write music, it's more for other people. Mm-hmm. Immediately. Mm-hmm. Whereas this, I mean, it's very much encapsulated in what I'm trying to manifest within myself first. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, I mean, if you want to read it, right? It doesn't feel it doesn't feel quite so a contribution. Yeah. Like music does.
Right. Mm-hmm. I wonder why that is. I think it's, when you move the oral, which all stories were originally, mm-hmm. and you move it to the written, then it's like, what is the line between journaling and, like journaling for your own process and like creating something. So you're talking about your new work, right? And I have that in my mind where I'm thinking like, when I asked you, what are you working on now? You started to describe this new book that you're writing. Mm-hmm. And where you went almost immediately was like, I feel like people don't talk about this kind of friendship or the friendship in this time of life. Mm-hmm. And there's something there for me to explore. So it's like you've identified a gap, right? Of story. There's a story that hasn't been told here and you feel called to tell a story. And that's like, for the written, like feeling called into something, mm-hmm. or it doesn't work like that with it. I'm not going to write a song just for me, just for my journaling.
You're right. I've never thought about this. I've never thought about this until you framed it that way, but you're absolutely right. Yeah. There is an immediate relationship to audience with music. Yeah. In a way that this takes a moment. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had this, but when people come up to you and say like, oh, I read your book, and they start talking about it. And I can't even listen because I'm still marveling over the fact that you read it?
All the way? From beginning to end?
I just forget. I forget that people actually read the thing.
Right, because by the time it comes out, also you're so removed. Like I when I started reading for the tour and started putting out the book, it was like, what did I write at that time? Like I remember very clearly what I intended with this book. I remember what I was doing, what I was thinking about, what I was going through, all the things that went into writing this book. And then there's this gap called the publishing business, right? That can take any length of time. And then by the time that final, like you've done all the edits and you've done all the reworks and you've done the copy editing and the line editing and then they send you the proofs, that's still like 10, 12 months before mm-hmm. your book actually is a thing. And so by the time it gets in your hands, you're like, what did I write? Like, I find poems that surprise me. I'm like, I wrote that? Go off. Like, good job, Amber Flame. Because I don't even remember. Like, it's because I've been writing, I wrote a whole nother book in the meantime. Or I've written a whole nother book, an album, and put out a visual art. So, like, I've done all this other creation because the generating and creating piece is like the time for us. Mm-hmm. And by the time you're like, okay, this is now my gift to the world, we're putting it out there. You have no idea what the reception is going to be. You have no idea what the audience is going to be. Who's going to be moved by what? That's always a shock for me.
Yeah, because I don't even think about it.
You can't. If I thought about who I was writing for in that way, like, who are you writing for?
Me?
And I guess then people like me. What does that mean, people like me? Who do I mean by people like me? Right? Like, I'm talking about right. So, and then you write fiction.
And nonfiction.
And I mean, I know you write nonfiction, but like you write fiction as well. And this is like this is my first foray. This is a fictional love story. It's not my story. It's not a relationship I saw play out in any kind of way. It was really one where I'm like, what if I could imagine a love affair that could like thrive, that I wanted to live in, that I wanted to believe in? What would that take? What would be the aspects of this relationship, that dynamic? And it wasn't my story. I didn't have any basis in facts. So creating from scratch a love affair was work that was really satisfying, because even if it never happens, I dreamt it happened.
Now, Amber, now you're teasing them because they haven't even heard any of it yet. Would you like to hear some of it?
Oh, what a
good. Oh, I know. I'm good at segues.
You're great.
I'm a master at segues.
I love it.
But I think people need to hear it.
I would be happy to. Do you want to read with me, maybe?
I mean, I'll read silently.
You
play
one of the
for
parts?
Yeah, but how are we going to
We're going to talk. I'll talk.
Okay,
yeah.
So we got this.
You're a professional. You're a pro. You're going to get to hear it the way I heard it in my brain. And this is very rare because I don't ask everybody I have conversation with. You have a great voice, so I'm like willing to do. Well, of course,
is it like Barry White?
Yeah, drop it low. So Apocrypha, as you might have heard, is a love story between a lover and their beloved. The idea was, I very, very intentionally made it non-gendered. The idea is that you imagine yourself as a lover or the beloved or both. You see yourself in the relationships you've been in or the relationships you dream of being in through their interactions. So they meet as two very separate people, two very different people. The lover is somebody who likes to go explore the world, travels a lot, wants to see all the wonders, doesn't really have a sense of home.
Except Scorpio.
I said Sagittarius.
That's right. That's right. No. You're right.
The adventurer, right? The centaur that shoots the arrow and goes galloping after it, right? So the Sagittarius kind of character, right, lands somewhere and meets a beloved who is happy at home, has built this wonderful life that is very settled, making bread, gardening, those kind of things, that just really settled at home and loving their own life. And when these two characters fall in love, of course, there's sparks and there's firework, and it's a very sensual, sexy part where they're just loving on each other. But then comes the conflict of like, but I want to go, not because I want to leave you, but because I still want to go love the whole wide world. And the beloved's like, I'm here, baby. Like, how can I believe that you're not leaving me when you want to go? Like, why don't you want me enough, essentially? So how do you resolve this conflict? And it is not a book to make you cry. So it's a love story, which means by trope, it must end happily. The poems are propelled by words that are not directly translatable to English. And I don't know if you remember, there was like a whole phase of these articles with like 23 words for love and romance that don't directly translate to English, and really beautiful words and phrases. So I did a lot of research into those because I'm a word nerd, ultimately. And then I use them as propellers into this for the story. So they're the titles, and they have little definitions that I've taken poetic license with. So do you want to read like the sexy parts? Do you want to read the like? How are you feeling?
How are they feeling?
How are you feeling? Do you want some of the manifestation? Do you want some of the healing parts? What you feeling? When they first meet, do you want an introduction to these characters, maybe? Yeah. Let's start there. Okay. You're like, okay, you ran it by me, but run it again. So how do you feel? What's your sign, by the way?
Cancer.
Oh,
so I'm the beloved. I'm the beloved all the way.
You gotta be the beloved. I'm not sorry. I'm glad that you're the beloved. So you're always the left-hand side is always the beloved, and the right-hand side is the lover. So I would love if you would read the first one, and I'm going to introduce it.
Okay.
It's on page 16 is where it starts, the elegy for solitude.
Mm-hmm.
So voorpret is a Dutch noun. 1, physical excitement in anticipation of fun or pleasure. 2, the first sweet awareness.
Elegy, solitude. Once sure of everything, a youngling, a ripe plucking, eaten before fruit rotted, letting juice wander of its own will. When my ache finds me, I am perpetually sticky, drawing bees. Certain the cycle of droop, of all things fertile, Sure, consumption is the way to reap a harvest.
Toska is a Russian noun. 1, the anguish of both melancholy and ennui. 2, a great hunger with no satisfaction. The lover says, I, always distant star, measureless sea, untilled field. Discover my wandering has left me an arid heart, a salted throat. So we're going to skip to Yuan Fen on page 21.
Mm-hmm.
Yuan Fen is a Chinese noun. 1, a meeting caused by fate. 2, an inexorable interaction with no destined outcome. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be done in dialogue, call and response. This
Yeah.
is with my blues and poetry.
So we're gonna go 1st,
Mhm.
left, right.
Yep.
Beautiful. This is many of these poems are written in contrapuntal. Should we give some context?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Contrapuntal is a form. It's a poetic device where you can read. The poem is constructed with the intention to read both left to right, but then also to read vertically. So the columns become kind of they could be an isolated voice, or it could be, well, a romance of voices.
A dialogue, if you will.
Which is why this is such a brilliant book. All right. Animal me can taste.
The puncture.
You coming. How
Hip and rib
bone popped.
threaten.
Crackling staccato.
Skin.
Jaw in slow stretch. Teeth unsheathing.
Your smells on my tongue lay thick in weight. Mami halapatinatape, a Jaeger noun. I try to do it fast, I try to do it slow. I mess it up every time. 1 is seduction without explicit action. 2, the act of waiting for the other to initiate contact.
In the gardens, a flowering vine.
You plump tendril.
Overgrown. I linger. In the city,
You overdue guzzle.
an overfull cup to slake. Palm the curve of me and be pleased.
I love this. This is how I heard it in my head. I heard the two voices going back and forth in dialogue. Let's do one more together, and then I'll read a couple one voice ones.
Mm-hmm.
Koi no yokan is a Japanese phrase. I define it as 1, a long-awaited premonition, or 2, someone who fits the fantasy of love.
I offered sugared smile
All slippery fingers.
and pulp-stained love notes. A guileless offering.
A craving expressed in sweet wet.
My mouth full.
A flood. Tissue insides giving way to
Urgent.
scissoring teeth.
With hunger pangs.
Belly a taut assurance. I'm loving the hype. You are my favorite hyper right now. So they go on and they start to fall for each other, and it gets very sensual. It's not super sexual. It's inspired by Song of Solomon in the Bible, because I am ultimately a church kid, and that was my first sort of erotica, because we didn't do any secular anything. So here were these beautiful descriptions of I'm searching for my beloved. She is dark and lovely. Her breasts like does in the field, like just some gorgeous imagery. I want to lay between your feet tonight. All this sort of innuendo and sensual energy without it becoming explicit. And I wanted to explore that between the beloved and the lover. My dream is that lovers and beloveds will curl up together and like read this to each other in these voices. So thank you. I'm going to skip a little bit. The reason why I want to skip to these ones is because one of the things that has changed in the intention since I wrote it, I was grieving. My mom had passed in 2015, and I shelved this project. And my first book, Ordinary Cruelty, is a collection of poems I wrote, like literally in the hospital while she was dying and in the months following. And it came out unexpectedly, did not plan to get it published, had this opportunity and pursued it and got my book published. And this book was sort of sitting there as like, I don't know what it's going to be. I love these words. I've done some research into these words, but I don't know what the story is yet. And I got a residency because of the poems I wrote about my mom dying, which is really hard to get gifts from grieving, right, from loss. And so here's this like burgeoning literary career happening because my mom died. And I was processing that a lot and having a hard time writing about what I was going through, what I was thinking. And so in this residency, I had this time and space to dream up a fictional love story. And my intention then was to write a spell to heal heartbreak. And so there's a lot of that magic in here of like, what does it mean to believe in love? Now, as I do more and more readings from it, I'm discovering that there's like, the intention is the conversation that emerges, like, are you the lover? Are you the beloved? Are you both? Are you neither? What do you want to manifest? And I went from feeling very connected to the lover character of like, I just want to explore the world, to being like, I'm building a home for myself. I'm building a home for myself. So we're going to sit in the beloved energy a little bit. The lover flies off because they got the itch, they got the pepper foot, as the island folks say, where they gotta travel. And so off the lover goes, and here is the beloved left to sort of rebuild for themselves. So this sonnet is called Inhalation, and it's the moment where the beloved goes, wait a minute, there's nothing wrong, actually. Today, the dead thing on the forest path, as I walked to the tree where we first met, did not immediately bring regret. Did not burn through my chest, my empty chest as wrath. It was, after all, a thing whose time passed, who mourns each night because the sun has set. I know bones and flesh are simply the debt the earth always comes to collect at last. And here it was, all the sweetness greening. I relearned how to breathe in deep relief, a world that continues even through grief, even through what seems to have lost meaning. As I walked, I saw nothing that stays dead. Just stasis, bud, blossom, fruit, repeated. So you want to do a couple more?
Together?
Yeah.
Oh. I was kind of entranced by you.
I can keep reading.
Can you do one more?
So the lover says, can I come back? Is my chair still there, or have you filled it with another lover? And this is an invocation after they reunite. Ode, invocation. Be it fevered hope, or of temporal stuff, do not lure me from my lover's side. Oh, do not keep from me the curving ridge and plane of ratchets and shoulder blade. Let me tarry here, exquisite dip of hip bone and argle of thigh. Let me chart paths of this flesh, all hill and hollow, this flesh. Let me sink and surface. Let me linger, let me hold fast.
I feel like you're the beloved.
I'm in my beloved era. Mm-hmm. It's true. I'm in my beloved. My kid is like, you have to be in your villain era first, and then you can be in your soft era. And I was like, listen, it's getting softer every day, y'all. Like, I don't think I have any villain in me right now. But yeah, this is sort of like, I'll read you another beloved poem because I think I'm sitting in this home I built for myself, and I keep quoting my own book to myself, which is always a good sign. Always a good sign. You can quote your own book to yourself. This is a quatrain. This is premonition. So this is right before the beloved meets their lover and falls. Here's a home I built myself, the foundation strong, unmoving, soil familiar as my skin. All paths lead me back here. Solitude, my own well-worn cloak. Here is a home I built myself to toil for and rest within, a haven, a completed pride. To make friends of moist morning grass, the hearth fire and rising bread loaf, here in home I built myself. Nothing lacking, no need to roam. For company, all life outside my door beckons wonder and awe. I am surfeit, calm content in knowing here is the home I built myself.
You feel really confirmed when you do that.
I keep coming back. I mean, when you're like pulling weeds in your yard, you know, and you're like, I'm preparing my home for, you know, winter and you know, that like putting down mulch and stuff. I filled the yard waste bin and I was like, look at me. here's a home I built myself. It's one very small yard out of the very much left I have to do, but it felt very accomplished at the time. And I was like, look at me, I'm settled at home. And there's a flux. So you just did a lot of traveling.
Mm-hmm.
How happy were you to come home?
I love coming home.
Don't you love coming home?
Yeah.
I think that's what this gave me. It gave me the gift of loving to return home. Because before I was like, itchy, it's not satisfying. I want to go see this, and I want to go explore the world, and I want to go do all the things. And I do. And that's okay, because I want to return home.
You know what it was, too?
What?
It was moving here.
Oh, tell me.
Because I used to live in Los Angeles.
Oh, that will make you not want to necessarily go home all the time.
But what's interesting is like I made some of the best friends in my life there. You know, and I have people there.
Yeah.
Like people.
Yeah.
But whenever I would go travel and I would come back, there would be this itchy feeling. You know, maybe it was descending into the smog, you know, that brown layer.
That could happen.
But when I moved up here, every single time I come home, it just feels like I'm coming into fresh air.
Yeah.
You know, and we have a home with a giant slobbery dog and, you know, all of the machinations of noise. But yeah, I just always love coming back.
Yeah.
And, you know, so maybe I also did a moment where I had a Sagittarian kind of
transit.
You know, I just kind of did that. It was like an elliptical journey.
Yeah.
Rather than the one that you've done, which kind of started Sagittarian and
yeah, and I mean, it's coming back around. Like during this time I was traveling so much, that this last 6 months, I've been traveling so much that I had to find a way to deal with the anxiety by like being like, oh yeah, like I was sitting in the airport to come here, and I was like, in just a few hours you'll be back in California. You love California. You love your sister. It's gonna be so great to be home. When I drove over the bridge, I got to drive over my bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge. I know other people own it and whatever, but like, I love a bridge that has its own makeup artist, like on call 24/7. And it's so cool now because when I drive over it, I see like, I'm like, oh, they just painted that side. And so then they're going to move to this side, and then you go through the next post and you're like, okay, and then they're going to have to come back to that one. And then like, you got to love a bridge that's like, you know, and again, and again, and again, because, you know, it's just, I've loved the Golden Gate Bridge since I was little and I saw it in pictures, right? So it was like, that's my bridge. But driving over it, I had that same breath that like, oh yeah, there is something really magic about home. And it's not always what you are calling your house or where you live. So I love this city so much. It's got my heart for sure. And I lived here for a while, which is how I knew the people that introduced me to you. And I made some of my lifelong connections and friends here, and I take them with me. But there's just this like, I don't know, to make a home for yourself, to get over the relationships or who you might have invited into that home at different times, and to reclaim it for yourself is its own grief journey, I think. And that's what I've gone through over the last couple of years, where I live now, which is Tacoma, Washington. You haven't heard of it, it's fine. It's actually really cool. It's got a very Oakland in the 90s vibe. It's like a lot more black than Seattle, a lot more brown than Seattle. It's funky. Parking is still free. You know, the downtown is still pretty, and there's nobody there because it's very quiet, but it's about to pop, you know, like everybody's buying, the gentrification is happening and all that. And it's just like, it's got this funky little vibe, and I'm settling into a home I built myself, which is not what I thought it was going to be.
You know, okay, you were talking earlier about manifestation, right? And the creative work that you do, you know, manifesting joy, manifesting, well, being alive, right? To survive. But how does that relate to this kind of new space that you're in where you're trying to conjure a home? I mean, how are those things related?
How are they related? I feel like it's my duty because I'm a parent, and I'm a parent very intentionally. I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it on purpose. And so my kid needing that stability became really clear, especially with quarantine. I was like, oh, you need to feel a sense of home and belonging that I didn't really need. Like, I grew up nomadic in that way. We moved all the time. We did road trips, all kinds of things. So I think of home as something that I can, with the right people, I can find anywhere. I can build anywhere. But my kid has shifted that for me. Home is complicated. It's work. Building a home is work for me because I could fly off. Like I could just live until I'm dead. Which sounds really morbid, but I mean it. Like I'm just like, I'll do what I can while I'm here. And when I stop breathing, I stop breathing. Like it's a very like laissez-faire attitude about being alive because it is hard to be alive. It is hard to care so much. And I care so much. And so that feels like work and a burden. And to shift it is to say, the life that I'm trying to provide for my child is the life I'm trying to provide for myself. That whole reparenting thing, like I'm giving myself a sense of home that I never believed would be there, so I never asked for it. Does it make sense?
And yet, okay.
Okay. Well.
And yet, you wrote this. And I mean, this is about the negotiation of these two kinds of, almost archetypes of lovers, right? Mm-hmm. And they come to an understanding. They come to a beautiful understanding, which kind of feels like home.
Yeah.
Feels like they were making a home in the way that they both understood. I mean, you have them understand one another. Yeah. This is not a Fisher, like you mentioned. It's a love story that has a happy ending. Yeah. But the happy ending is not like, oh, it's more like, I see you and I know me. Yeah. And this is how we're going to make this happen. But you wrote this earlier.
When I had no fathom in my own mind of having it myself.
Yeah. So what do you think was the reason why you wrote this? I mean, because you just talked about how, when I asked you about home, look at me, I'm like, spotlight on me. But when you talked about home, you talked about your kid, but this
is not about a kid.
Yeah. And so what do you think, why did you write this?
Because I want to have hope. I want to believe in love. I want to. And I keep trying to, right? Mm-hmm. So, I was just saying to my sister, I was like, what if the great love affair is not for me in this lifetime? There's lots of people who die without experiencing the great love affair. What if the great love affair is not my path this lifetime? And I don't want that to be true. And luckily, through this journey, I've actually met people who are like, we met when I was 58. And I'm like, oh, hallelujah, I have years left. Okay, good. Because maybe, it could happen until you're dead, right? So I wrote it because I hope. I want to hope. And I really believe in love. Like, I know that the times when I felt like I was in love, I could do all kinds of things. It was the gas in my tank. I could run on love for a long time. And so the constant is my kid. I have a great relationship with my kid and we're very loving. So I'm like, okay, but at least I have this love affair with my child if nothing else comes my way. And I have loving relationships and all that stuff, but there's something that I wanted to dream up here. And I love what you said, because now I want you to read another poem with me.
Okay.
Towards the end, where exactly that, like I dream up something where I don't have to surrender myself. I don't have to give up a piece of me and not realize it's gone until it didn't work out, and then you have to reclaim it. You know what I mean? I know that story very, very well. And we see that story play out in so many of these books, right? Because it's conflicty and interesting and tragic and all the things. Mm-hmm. But how many times do we get to sit and and it worked out? They figured it out.
Yeah, that. Okay, what I love about this book is the figuring out. Yeah, is what is most magical, because Amber goes into it with these two characters. And you're right. Most of the time it's like, oh, we had this love affair, but, I choose me.
Me.
And,
you weren't good for me, or I wasn't good for you.
Right. Late capitalist individualism.
There ain't no bad guy.
Right. But no, you take the time, using the contrapuntal, again, I just...
Thank you.
To have them understand where each other is, and that brings them together.
That you don't have to give up who you are or what you want or what you're driven by.
Yeah.
what it takes to believe in somebody else is not actually not just letting them be who they are, but like letting that be revealed in how they are with you, right? So it's not I need to run and go explore, and while I'm gone, I'm thinking of you too. That is new to the lover. The lover's like, you're on my mind, and I am excited to return and tell you all about it. And then I'm going to go again, and then I'm going to return. Maybe you can come with me. Like, I imagine the future after this story ends with them being really interesting. And that's the thing. I don't want a lover that's like, okay, now we're together, and we make dinner together, and we put the kid to bed, and that's not the love affair I want.
They're both choosing one
to
another.
Be themselves and each other.
Exactly. Which I don't know. I think there's some wisdom in that.
Thank you. I try to be wise when it occurs to me. So that's exactly. I would love to. Let's read 85. Ilunga is a Tishluba noun, and I define it as an imperfect person loving what one can tolerate, or 2, one who decides to try again when loving has failed. This is towards the end.
Can I be the lover this time?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I remain my own self.
I remain my own self.
Wiser, perhaps.
Less brash.
But open.
Expansive. In beloved's sure regard.
Unceasingly free. Yeah, so exactly what you said of like, I'm me. And I'm sure of this. And what would it take to be sure of another human that doesn't have to?
How do you answer that?
Have you ever been in a love affair where you could tell that it wasn't that they were lying or telling you something that wasn't true, but it was something that wasn't right for them, like they were doing it for you? They were saying something or wanting something because they thought that it would be what you wanted. That sort of, I am really suspicious of those. Really suspicious of people who are like, we could, but, and I'm like, you don't. Somebody was like, I could move to California. I'm like, you have never wanted to move to California. So don't do it for me. That sense of like, don't do it for me, do it for you. And it matches for me. I think that's what it takes. I think I really, where there's no inauthenticity to who you're being, and I still see it working. I still see the camaraderie, the companionship, and the like care, which doesn't mean there's not compromise. There is compromise. You're giving up some freedom to join your life with another person, another adult person who has to give up some freedom. Otherwise, somebody is making all the sacrifices, and the other person is not. So what is that give and take in a really open way? Like I said, I haven't experienced it, but I have hope. I have hope. I believe if you can name it, if you can name it, you can be it, right? You're pulling out all the cliches out of me and the song lyrics. So I would love, if you want to explore a love story, I would love to sign your book, but I'd also like to answer any questions you might have. You are a great question answer. That felt like an interview. Like, I feel like a real author that was put on the spot here. Thank you.
I didn't ask any of the questions.
None of the ones that I was like, we could talk about this, and moons, and magic, and astrology. None of that happened. But, Cancer, and I'm an Aries of the Scorpio moon, which is why I said, oh. Not an oh. Oh, in a good way. I love that.
I'm
Thank
a Scorpio moon, too.
Yes. Oh, see? Yet another point. What's your rising?
Rising. Wait.
We'll have to circle back.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll get one of these astrology books.
Yeah. You need to know your birth time for that one. Yeah. We'll get there.
I'm sure.
Interestingly, I thought it was a double Aries rising, Aries sun, until my mom passed. And then we found paperwork in her boxes that had like the hospital actual time, and it was like a whole 2 hours before she had been saying she thought I was born. She's like, I think I was her 4th child. She was a single mom. She didn't remember shit. And I was like, she's like, I think I'm like around 7:30, so that would make me an Aries rising. No, I learned I was a Pisces rising not that long ago.
Is that the 3rd one?
No.
Never mind.
No, it's No, we'll talk about it. We'll get into astrology. What about you all? Do you have any questions? No? Are you the lover or the beloved? I have questions for you all. What relates more? I'm looking at you because I keep meeting your eye over and over again.
Beloved.
Yeah. It's sort of home in the self, very sure of your ground here. Love that.
I think we have a lot of beloveds in the
Yeah?
audience.
Are you and your partner beloved?
We're kind of both beloveds.
Yeah.
But I actually act as the lover a little bit in the dynamic. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I feel more beloved.
Okay.
Mm.
Because then you get the satisfaction, like I'm sorry, I don't know why fat cat came to mind, but like I'm gonna sit back and rub my belly. Like that's the image that came to me. I don't
Actually,
know
that's
at all.
That's quite literal.
There were like 2 licks and then you gonna rub my belly. It's amazing. It's so amazing.
I know, I found the magic.
Yeah, I mean, if you find it, hold it, right? It's a lonely world out here. I think that if we can believe, I really do believe in manifestation. I really do remind myself that if I can imagine it, then it's got to be available. It's got to be accessible. It's got to be buildable. Because the poems didn't exist until I imagined them, right? So if I can build a story, truth is always stranger than fiction, right? Like I couldn't imagine up something that couldn't possibly exist.
And maybe that's exactly what all poetry is, right? Is a conjuring, a manifestation. We're all sorcerers.
Yeah, trying.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah,
I'm
trying to be.
gonna put this on.
We're all sorcerers.
Well, with that, I think we're at time, yes?
Yes.
That was so great. I was thoroughly entertained. I'm obsessed. It's a vibe.
Hey.
Thanks so much for coming. Please buy copies of Amber's book. She'll be signing them at the back desk over here. And thank you again for coming to Green Apple tonight. And that was a great conversation. And I can explain anything. You don't have to look at the books that we have locked away over there about astrology. All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
I'm so surprised you don't know your rising.